So this week I had the opportunity to go to an Equatio session, and I've been using Equatio for years, but never really kind of maximizing all the tools that are available. And so this 5 minute workflow is going to focus on kind of leveraging a lot of those tools inside G Suite. So slides, docs, spreadsheets, and Google Forms. So one thing that we need to start with is this idea that everybody has a free account for Equatio. You need to just come to this page, text help, find the Equatio button. You're going to put in some personal information, and then you have a free account as an educator. So that gets you all the premium features of Equatio, and you can start using it right away. You want to install the add-on so that it shows up here, and then when you click on that, it should bring up the toolbar at the bottom of any docs, slides, spreadsheets, or forms. Okay, once we have it set up, then we can start to play. So again, the bane of any teacher, science teacher, physics teacher, math teacher's existence is getting formulas onto your page and making them look nice. There's a couple ways we can do this. We can use the equation editor or we can use LaTeX. I'm going to use the equation editor. Okay, that's a lot to write out. Okay, but what I can do is kind of use some of the predictive text to find things like this. And now I can insert that math right into my page. Close my editor here. And now it looks nice and neat and focused. Okay, maybe while I'm talking about the quadratic formula, I might also want to be talking about like what quadratics actually look like and what the roots of a quadratic actually are. And this is where it gets really powerful is this graph editor. So this is powered by Desmos. Okay, and what we can do is we can actually create Desmos style graphs here in order to kind of make things visual for our students. And one thing that I really like, okay, is that you can enter an equation. Okay, so we're going to look at a quadratic, y equals, let's put in ax to do squared. I'm going to do shift arrow up. Okay, put a squared there. Okay, and then plus minus, let's do minus 3, minus 4. Okay, and then what happens is it actually gives us this option to create a slider. Okay, so just like in Desmos, we can create this slider that's going to allow us to kind of move that a value around a little bit. Okay, and so now kids can actually play around with what that a value does. Okay, if we came back up to here, we could also do this with the intercept. So we could put a b in there, and then we could add a slider for b. Okay, and then we could start to play around with what that looks like. Okay, if this was like physics class, for instance, okay, we could bring in a table of values and then have kids look at that table of values in the graph that unfolds afterwards. Okay, or let's say we were looking at like acceleration, for instance, in physics. Okay, what we could do is we could put in the acceleration equation. Okay, so we could do v1 times time plus 0.5. A is for acceleration, and then time squared, like that. Okay, and then again, we could add sliders for V1, A, and T. Okay, and then we could begin to play around with what happens when we play around with these variables. Okay, so that's kind of an interesting part to this too. Oops, and we don't want T, we want X. So we get that nice shape again. There we go. So we can play around with what each of these means and how this affects the motion of our object. Okay. So that's kind of interesting too, and how that initial velocity can kind of shift things around. That's kind of interesting. And then when we're done, we could just insert that into our slide. So what kids will do when they get a copy of your slide deck is they'll click on here and then they'll go edit math. Okay, and that will bring them into the slider now for them to begin to play and manipulate their graph. Okay, so you're going to want to make a copy for them. Okay, and then they should, with their free Equatio accounts, be able to edit that. So they just have to make sure they have it installed. For the chemistry teachers, don't worry, I got you covered too. Okay, for chemistry, we can just begin typing chemicals. Okay, I'm going to do something with potassium today. Okay, here's all my potassium compounds. Boom, I drop them in, I insert it. Okay, and then it's in there in my sheet. Okay, and it looks pretty good. Okay, there's some more complicated ones. Let's say maybe I was doing like methane. There we go, methane, and I can just insert that. Okay, it saves me from having to do all the subscripts. Now, where things can get really powerful here is with math spaces. So, and these STEM tools. So the STEM tools provide a lot of things that we can kind of drag and drop into our slides, like a interactive periodic table, for instance. Okay, so now kids can click on here and they can get information on the fly as they're working on something for you. Okay, so that's kind of powerful. What else do we have here? We have the scientific calculator. So if we want kids to show their calculation steps, they could include them here. Okay. And then we also have the molecular viewer. So you can put in a molecular viewer. Okay. You could look for specific molecule. Okay. And then we get a nice three-dimensional molecule that kids can be looking at as well. Okay. Now let's have a look at math spaces. There's 2 places. You can insert a math space, okay, or you can try the Equatio math space. They're slightly different. Let's try insert math space. This allows you to put a math space right into your slide deck, okay? And so what this is it's just a giant canvas, okay, that you can write on, okay, if you want to, or again, you can start to put in some tools that might be handy for kids. Okay, so if I go shapes, I'm thinking about physics teachers now. The bane of any physics teacher's existence is electrical circuits, so like resistors. Okay, now I can drag and drop some resistors in here. Okay, so I can copy that. I'm going to copy that and paste it a bunch of times. Now I got a bunch of resistors, and I can have kids starting to build circuits. Okay, and then once they're done building their circuit, they can solve that circuit. So they can find R1. Okay, and they can just write it on here. Okay, equals let's say 3 ohms, something like that. Okay, or R2 equals 2 ohms. Something like that. Okay, and then you can insert that right into your slide. Okay, so kids can actually insert their work right into the slides like that. That's one way that we can do it. The other way that you can use these workspaces, okay, is to try the Sequazio workspace. And what this does is it actually allows you to create workspace assignments. So let's say I was working on Bohr Rutherford diagrams. I can create a little template for my Bohr Rutherford diagrams. And I'm gonna have kids fill these in. So then what I wanna do is maybe give them some instructions. Okay, so I might say we need to draw the Bohr Rutherford diagram for sodium, for instance. Okay, so I'm gonna use this text editor and just say we're gonna do sodium Rutherford diagram. Okay, and I'm gonna insert that. And now we got that kind of set up. And then what I can do is I'm going to show kids how to do this, but then I will assign it to them. So I'd say, okay, well, when you get this, what you're going to do is you're just going to draw on your electrons and then you're going to hand it back into me. Okay. So once I have it kind of ready to go and I'm ready to share it, there's a couple ways I can do this. Okay. I'm going to make a copy for each person, or I can do this expecting a response. I'm just going to make a copy for each person. I'm going to go continue. Okay. I could just post it straight in Google Classroom. So I could go to my Google Classroom, find my class and post it that way. Or what I could do is if I'm using D2L, I could just drop this link in there. And then what I have is a nice kind of interactive worksheet that students can take a picture of and hand in afterwards or submit on their own. Again, all my STEM tools are available to me here. So I could drop in a periodic table here, okay? And I could have kids look up that information on the periodic table right alongside doing their Bohr Rutherford diagram, okay? Something like this. If it was like a grade 11 class, then I might say like, okay, I also want you to calculate, the molar mass for something. So I'm going to put a calculator in there too, okay? So you can create these really kind of rich interactive um, spaces for your math and science students to do work using Equatio. And again, they embed nicely with our existing slides and docs. The last thing I'll show you is how we can use this with Google Forms and Google Docs. So I'm going to go doc.new. Okay, so same thing. I just open up my Equatio editor, just like I did before. So it looks the same in Sheets as it does on slides as it does on docs. Okay, and now what I can do is again I can maybe create a math space for them. Okay. And this one, I'm going to do more shapes, and maybe we're going to look at some really specific math stuff like a triangular prism. Okay. And I can start to label this now with information. I can either do it with the handwriting tool or insert text. Okay. And I can have then students solve, for instance, maybe the surface area, right? I can have them solve for surface area of this whole pyramid. Okay. And then when I'm done and I'm happy with it, then I can just go insert. And I've created a nice little worksheet where students can do their math work. Okay, that's how I would use it in docs. And then finally, we can have a quick look at forms. Okay, forms.new. Okay, so what you'll notice here on forms is you get this little Equatio icon here. So maybe I'm making a chemistry question, okay, and it's going to be about, let's say it's about like a really complicated molecule. Okay, let's start with ethanol. Let's do ethanol. Okay, now I can insert that right into there. It's going to show up as an image. Okay, and what that allows me to do is like quickly and easily get those subscripts in, which can be difficult on Google Forms. Let's say we're doing like atomic notation. I think call it nuclear notation. So again, really tricky because there's lots of little places to fill information in. But this would allow students to kind of quickly and easily kind of fill in some information really quickly and have it look like atomic notation. So now they can insert that as their answer and it looks nice and clean. Okay. And it's not very clunky in terms of what the final product looks like. So then they can submit that. And then on the teacher end, we can see what that looks like. We'll see the answer and it'll look nice and clean in that atomic notation that we were expecting. So this is kind of just a handful of the things that we can do with Equatio. There is much more, but this is sort of the best things I think that math and science teachers could leverage in the coming months with hybrid learning and distance learning. So if you have any questions, please reach out.